Hello and welcome back to Gamecock Scoop and the GamecockScoop.com podcast. Gamecock Scoop is the home of the South Carolina Gamecocks on Rivals. Don't forget to like and subscribe and follow us on your favorite podcast app. We're posted everywhere. We're also at Rivals Gamecock on every social media. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell, all that stuff. I'm Caleb Alexander, publisher at Gamecock Scoop. I'm here with Pauline, who is our social media and video and everything else
Everything.
manager. How's it going, Pauline?
It's going pretty well. I'm back down here instead of up in Connecticut, so back at home.
Yeah, there you go. It's probably a little warmer down there. It's still getting chilly at night up here. I'm in Rhode Island right now, so
It's 93 degrees today, and there's like a heat advisory.
yeah.
Not used to it.
So we just had a pretty crazy 4th of July weekend. I was telling the rest of our team that there was a pretty funny moment where, like, obviously, if you ever pay attention to GamecockScoop.com, anytime which you should, anytime there's a commitment, we usually post an article pretty quickly after the commitment because very rarely do we get surprised on things because we wouldn't be doing our job very well if we did. And so I had Dontavius Braswell's article like all set and ready to go, but he committed while I was floating down the river because it's July 4th weekend, and just like hanging out with my friends. So I had to all of a sudden be like, wait, and like while I'm floating down the river, run everything from my phone. So that was a fun experience and fun little surprise for Gamecock fans on that one. So yeah, we had
Very inconvenient on his end.
hey, I'll take it. I thought it was fun. So yeah, we had commitments from running back Dontavius Braswell, who is a 4-star running back out of Georgia. We had commitment from 2024 quarterback Dante Reno, and we had a commitment from 4-star linebacker Jaden Robinson out of Florida. So we'll talk a little bit about all three of those today. We're going to talk about some other upcoming announcements, a little bit of news and notes from around Gamecock country, and then really focus in on some of this realignment talk because that's what's kind of going on in the SEC and the whole world of college football right now. It seems like the whole sport is changing right before our very eyes. So yeah, real quick, let's talk about a couple of these commitments. So like I said, running back Dontavius Braswell, pretty fun story here. I don't know how close you're paying attention to this, Pauline, but a few weeks ago, he officially visited Nebraska, and then he officially visited South Carolina. And then coming off that South Carolina visit, we got some quotes from him. What's the guy's name? It was someone from the Georgia Tech or national rival site. But anyway, as a corporation, as rivals, we got some quotes from him saying Nebraska's number one, 1A, South Carolina's 1B, like he wasn't really sure. And then about a week later, he put out a top 4, and South Carolina wasn't in the top 4. I mean, me and everyone that had reported this that like thought that we knew what was going on, we're just like, okay, well, that's kind of weird. But turns out he was just messing with us, and I've actually heard
do that.
Yeah, I thought it was a lot of fun. I've heard some takes from other people that were a little like other people in the recruiting world that were a little annoyed about it, but like at the end of the day, I mean, they don't owe me the information. Like I'm going to do my best to get the information. And we still did get the information before he announced, but I thought it was fun. Troll away.
He was playing game.
Yeah. No, well, us people on the media, seriously, us people on the media take ourselves too seriously sometimes. I mean, this is my livelihood, but good job, Dontavius. You got it.
You're on the river, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you have to be writing an article in your tube.
Well, the article was at least written. We did get some wind of what was going down about a week out, but anyway, so that was a fun little surprise. He announced at 4 p.m. on Saturday that he was going to be joining the Gamecocks, and I think that's a really big time commitment. He's legit athlete, legit speed. He won the state championship in the 100 and 200 meter on his track team this year. And his film is like pretty incredible. Just there's sometimes where it's like video game stuff where he'll run over to the right side of the field and then completely reverse all the way around, which he won't be able to do in college, but it just shows you what sort of athlete he is. There are some questions on GamecocksScoop.com, which, by the way, one of the features of being a premium member of GamecocksScoop.com is you get to ask me questions every week. I put up like an Ask Caleb thread, and if you ask me something, I'll tell you everything I know about it, or try to track down the answer for you. But anyway, there were some questions about how this would affect Trayon Webb's recruitment, who is another running back target that South Carolina is after. And honestly, I've been saying for a long time, I don't think that he's going to land with South Carolina. So, I mean, it doesn't really affect it at all. But if you were someone that was holding out hope, I guess, maybe that affects it a little bit. Later that night at 7 p.m., Dante Reno announced that he was going to be committing to South Carolina. It's 2024 four-star quarterback. He is like pretty much everything that you can ask for to build that class around. So great passer, great person, can throw from multiple angles. And I think he's also going to be a great ambassador and get some peer recruiting done. If you want to know more about him, we have stuff posted all over the YouTube. We have 2 interviews posted with him on the YouTube, and we have tons of content on the site. But I've told this story a few times. This is like a perfect like encapsulation of him to me. So I guess it was like 3 weeks ago or so. We had already been talking. I already knew he was going to commit. And I was like, hey, can we hop on and go ahead and like pre-record this commitment interview? And he's like, yeah, great, let's do it. So we go through this whole 15-minute interview like we're doing right here. And it was great. I was like, man, this is some good stuff. We're killing it. I look up to end the broadcast and I realize I never hit record. So I was like, oh no. And at that moment I was like, like, Dante, thanks for your time. Like, I totally understand. We didn't get it. That's my bad. And he was like, no, like, let's run it back. Let's do it again. We're going to do it even better the second time. And so he sat through another 12-minute interview with me. And like, I can't say enough how much I appreciated that. And also just like, again, shows you what kind of person that South Carolina is getting there, because I don't know when I was 17, 18 years old that I would have had that same level of patience. In fact, I know I wouldn't have. So
same boat.
There's a couple rumors out there about him potentially reclassifying to 2023. We'll see how that works out. We'll talk about that more if we need to later. And then the third commitment from the weekend came on July 4th, Independence Day. Four-star linebacker Jaden Robinson, who rounded out my third future cast from the June 24th weekend. So I put in a future cast for Robinson, CJ Adams, and someone else that committed that I can't think of off the top of my head right now, but you can check that out on the website if you need to. But he was the one I was waiting on, so he announced that commitment, and now there are currently no more like pending welcome homes that are about to be announced, although there is still one out there from January that we'll see how that goes. And then we got a couple more things kind of coming up in the next few weeks. Dylan Monaghan is set to announce on July 15th. That was the 2023 quarterback target. There's been a lot of talk about him today, potentially not landing with South Carolina, which I, don't have full confirmation one way or another on, at least not independently. But that, if you've been reading my stuff, that shouldn't surprise you. I've been kind of pumping the brakes on him since late June. I would be surprised if he landed with South Carolina, and I've been sort of saying so here for a while. I never put in a future cast for him because I don't do that unless I am feeling very confident. And yeah, so I'm sorry that you guys are all figuring this out right now, but if you're reading, you would have known a couple weeks ago.
Doing your homework.
Also, Jaden Greathouse is set to announce on the same day, July 15th. We'll see, but I certainly wouldn't expect that to be anything. And then Big Tree, so Tosin Babalade is set to announce on July 31st. And that one is truly, like, for me currently, it's a 3-team race. It's Maryland, Ohio State, and then South Carolina. So we'll see how that plays out. And if you read GamecocksScoop.com, I'll keep you posted on everything I hear there. The other thing that we kind of have going on currently here is the Greet the Gamecock series, which Pauline has been running. So it's kind of fun because I've been talking to commitments and talking to them about their recruitment and talking to them about football and all the more like serious style things. But Pauline has been with this great Greet the Gamecocks series talking to some freshmen, and now we're going to start talking to some 2023 recruits about more like their background, their life, their other hobbies outside of football, really getting to know them as a person a little bit. So I don't know if you want to talk about that a little, Pauline.
Well, I'm excited because I get to keep meeting all these new and incoming players. But like you were saying earlier with Dante, you had a great conversation with him, and it's such a cool way to get insight into like how they even are, like how they're going to be a teammate and stuff like that. And it's cool just because like I'm a senior now, so like I've already gone through it, and like they're coming in, they don't know what they're doing. Like it's kind of fun to just like see what they're excited about and like the whole college experience even in and of itself. But yeah.
I mean, I've noticed in listening to those that you do kind of give like advice as a student a little bit too, as like, oh, you got to check out this spot on campus, or you got to check out this restaurant, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, give them a little help before they venture off into the city of Columbia. Gotta keep our football players safe.
I'm sure that's greatly appreciated. One more just like little thing to address before we get into a little bit of a deeper talk on the realignment. There are some rumors that I've been seeing on Twitter about Gigi Jackson and things not necessarily being over between him and South Carolina. Right now, that's a non-story for me until it is. That's all I'm really going to say about it. Like, I've done some digging on it. I don't feel confident enough to start like getting people's hopes up about anything yet. And if I get to the point that I do feel more confident about it, then I'll let you know. But I'm going to let Twitter rumors be Twitter rumors for now. The last thing that we're going to kind of dig deep on, and this is what all of the college football world has been digging deep on for the last week. USC and UCLA are headed to the Big Ten, apparently, despite having no real geographic connection to the Big Ten. And, everyone kind of had an existential crisis when this happened because if there's no geographic connection to conferences, then what really is a conference? And this also opens the door for both the Big Ten and the SEC, who are obviously the two biggest and most successful college football conferences on a year in and year out basis, to maybe keep expanding, maybe become gigantic super conferences, which there's been a lot of rumors on Twitter today that, there are various teams that the SEC is talking to. We posted an article on the site from our Georgia site, UGAsports.com. Jim Donnan, who is a former Georgia coach, went on with Dane Young, who is the staff writer over there on the Rivals Georgia site. And basically he said Miami, Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina are going to be in the SEC pretty quick. So I don't know how credible or not that is, but there's definitely seems to be some talks between various schools in the South and the SEC. Those are all ACC schools, so we'll see if there's anything there. But yeah, so the question is like, what's off limits, what's on limits as far as this conference expansion goes, and then where are we going from
The NCAA right now is just the whole mess. I'm just like, it's ridiculous. But in my personal opinion, I think the whole idea behind having conferences is the whole geographic and like locality wise of where the schools are at. And there's always been talk of South Carolina actually going to the ACC just because of the fact that they're closer than a lot of other schools like Florida and stuff like that. Like, what's the point of doing that if those aren't even if that doesn't matter anymore? Like USC and UCLA are going to basically Penn State and other schools along that line all the way over on the East Coast. Like, that's kind of ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I mean, Rutgers is a 40-hour drive or something like that. Like, that's about as far east as you can get over in Jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so far, a lot of the schools that have been talked about in the SEC at least make sense a little bit from a geographic footprint. Although then the question becomes, do they bring what the league is searching for, which is more viewers? Like, are you really getting more viewers from Florida by adding Miami, Florida State that you're not already getting by having Florida there? Are you really getting more viewers from South Carolina by adding Clemson that you don't already have by having South Carolina there? Now,
Mm.
North Carolina, that's a completely new market, and that market makes a lot of sense. I also saw a tweet that mentioned Virginia earlier. That's a new market. That's a market that makes sense. And obviously, for the Big Ten, like going to the West Coast is a completely new market for them.
The whole pack 12 just needs to completely like start from scratch again, because at this point, if it does end up being these 20 team conferences, like, who's left over there? Nobody, essentially. So they're not even right now making, I would say, enough of an impact to be able to have like the SEC networks and to have all these like now media focused goals and like objectives. I would say like they won't be able to make enough money because these fans aren't going to be coming to their games, at least.
Yeah, I mean, it really calls into question like what is a conference. Of course, I would imagine if you're 20 deep that you're going to have to split into pods, and then maybe you do get a little bit of that regionality back. If the Big Ten adds a couple more West Coast schools or whatever, then you just have a West Coast section of the Big Ten, and they already have like an agreement where they play each other between the Pac-12 and the Big Ten anyway. So there's some natural. I mean, they've always had the Rose Bowl or whatever too. And then the SEC, yeah, you go 20 deep, but if you have a pod of South Carolina, Clemson, North Carolina, and Georgia, for example, or something like that, then I mean, you're playing all border rivals or in-state rivals, which makes it fun. And then you start to mix those pods with some of the other people. So, I mean, I'm not necessarily doom and gloom about it. When this first came out, I was a little bit doom and gloom about it. But I have to imagine if you are in the ACC or the Big 12 or the Pac 12 right now, and you're a school like, say, Washington State, or a school like, I don't know, Baylor, or you're a school like Duke, you have to be kind of sweating. Now, Duke at least has a basketball brand, so maybe they'll be okay. But you have to be kind of sweating if you're one of those schools that is
I didn't
not
even
really
think of
bringing
that.
much to the table football wise.
I didn't even think of that, but that's smart. But like my other big thing is that we already had so much talk and like issues among like scheduling wise once Texas and Oklahoma joined. There was the whole debate about how many games we're gonna have and stuff like that. So if we're making 20, like a 20 team conference, like that's you're already in the same place you were before, but worse. You don't know how many games you're gonna play. Like, the season isn't long enough, I feel like, to be able to like have like college football season, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it very much becomes like an NFL model, right? Where you have the SEC is as the AFC and the Big Ten as the NFC or whatever, where, okay, you guys play your own side for the most part and figure out, this pod is playing this pod this year and they're going to cross divide
Rotate.
that or whatever. But then I guess you end up with your SEC playoff or SEC side of the bracket, and then your Big Ten playoff or Big Ten side of the bracket, and they come together and play like a Super Bowl or national championship against each other. And I don't know if we want that or not. It's just going to be different. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing, but it's definitely going to be different. But let's get a little bit more specific to South Carolina. So, how would you feel about Clemson joining the SEC? Do you think that eliminates any advantage that we might currently have as being the SEC school within the state of South Carolina?
Hmm. See, that's a good question. Just because of the fact that I didn't even think of, oh, we're the actual SEC school in South Carolina, because that would kind of take our title away really quickly.
It's one of the things
I
that
think
really, I think, annoyed Texas A&M about Texas joining is this idea that now you've lost that exclusivity within your state of being the SEC school.
that is something, and I mean, like, especially in the SEC, like, that's a big title to have. But I don't know. I feel like rivalry wise and just like fan base wise, like, it'll definitely, I think, in the end, hype everybody up and be like beneficial. But for us personally, I feel like at the games, way more people would show up. To be completely honest, I think way more people would show up, but which would mean more money for us. But it also would put us at a way more of a disadvantage, just like season wins wise. And they're just going to become a powerhouse with Alabama, who's already, I mean, besides this past season, but like,
yeah, I mean, it puts them
there's
more
no
at a
shot.
disadvantage too, though. Like right now in the ACC, there's not that many teams that actually compete with them. Definitely not that many teams that can compete with them year in and year out financially, and just the way that they're already kind of set up for like an SEC school. So I do think that it would even the playing ground for them on a game in and game out basis. They have to play SEC schedule that we've been struggling through for the last 30 years. And I do think that probably, at least initially, works to the advantage. But then we use Texas A&M as an example before. Then if you give a school that's already got a bunch of resources like Clemson all that SEC money, it's not going to take them that long to catch up. So we're about to build our own super conference, and we were talking about how currently South Carolina is ranked number 16 in valuable like football teams revenue, and Clemson is down at 25, and a lot of that is because of the SEC. So if Clemson then joins the SEC, I have to think that gap probably diminishes a good bit. Do you think that there's any scenario where South Carolina gets left out? We're talking about these sort of uh, small schools that are not necessarily a big enough brand to get pulled in, like a Washington State or an Oregon State or whatever, to get pulled into these super conferences. Now, it obviously helps that South Carolina is already part of the SEC, and the SEC is one of those big conferences. But if we're doing a full reset or whatever, do you think there's any scenario where South Carolina gets left out there?
I feel like no, just because of the fact that it's like, it would be basically saying like you're taking out the University of Michigan is like way better than us in the sense of like that, but like they're already like pre-established. They're a big school name. Like it's a big state. It's one of the bigger state schools in the state or whatever. So I don't personally think I would see Baylor, and I would honestly see like Virginia Tech and stuff, like schools along those lines, even like Rutgers. Like I would see those types of schools, like you were saying earlier, not make the cut. But I also feel like, to your point of financially speaking wise, even though I totally see them if they were joining, catching us like up to us, but where we are located, they're in like the middle of nowhere, and it's basically like it's the town, and there's no really other source of revenue besides the school coming in. We live in a like metropolitan, in the capital of South Carolina, so there's so many more opportunities, I guess, to have other ancillary like revenues come in and stuff like that on top of whatever the football program brings in. So I don't necessarily know if they would outrank us, but I think that because of where we're situated financially, and just like we already are in the SEC, and the SEC. See, if you were gonna rearrange it though, are we talking like nobody knows like previously like where they were in a conference beforehand? So,
Right, and
i.e., like,
that's not the scenario we're dealing with. But I do wonder if everything completely reset. Uh, we're probably
because
on the
like the whole
borderline. What are
namesake.
we? Yeah, what are we talking? 40 teams. So you got 20 in the SEC, 20 in the Big Ten. So if you just take 20 Southern to Western teams, does South Carolina make that cut? And I think they do, but I think they're probably on the lower end of it, like 15 to 20 sort of range.
I'd cut them some slack. They were the 13th school to join the SEC. I'll keep them at 13. That's what I'll say. I'll keep them at 13. But
yeah, so we're about to kind of like draft our 20-team conference if we could pick everything from scratch. And one of the resources we used was gobankingrates.com, broke down the 25 most valuable college football programs. And again, a lot of them are in the SEC or the Big Ten because of the way that the media deals worked out. But just for reference, at the moment, South Carolina is 16th in the country for most valuable college football programs. So it is pretty clear that they are a valuable brand. They're tied with Arkansas, who joined the SEC at the same time. They're ahead of some SEC programs like Ole Miss. They're ahead of Clemson. So I think that there's no doubt that they're a valuable brand. It's just, how valuable. And I guess we'll find out here in just a second when we draft our 20 teams. Anything else that you wanted to say just about this whole realignment issue? I know you were mentioning something about the way that pro teams might play into these media markets a little bit.
Well, how the whole thing kind of kicked off was obviously USC and UCLA were the ones to move. But just trend-wise speaking, ever since SoFi Stadium was built and the Rams and the Chargers started playing there, the popularity and UCLA used to be a phenomenal football program, and they're really not doing well. I mean, many of the teams aren't doing well anymore, but that's because just trend, my personal opinion, but I've noticed it, is that when pro football teams end up coming into the state, the actual college teams themselves lose interest, and then obviously that's downward spiral from there. But I think that's one of the reasons why they moved in the first place, because of the fact that they kind of knew that that was over for them. I think that might have been an incentive for them, but also because in 2025, that's basically when ESPN's contract is up, and at that point, I'm looking ahead in the future. The SEC network is already like pre-established. It's very like well run, whatever. But that's the new wave of sports media, even just like viewing sports, college athletics in general. It's all going to be media based and all going to be online and be that. So I think they're preparing for 2025. Like they're getting their foot in the door beforehand, making sure that they'll be able to be one of those teams, and in that case, make that type of money. But I don't know if that would challenge the SEC network in a way. Like what's going to happen to that in 2025?
That's where this is all stemming from, right? It's the media stuff. Like, sure, attendance is down at USC and UCLA. Attendance is down across the country. And that's sad because so much of what college football is about is the fan passion and the home field advantage and the stadiums and the local rivalries. And I think we are losing a lot of those things in this new landscape. But those TV executives don't care about any of that. They just care if you're watching. And they want to take the biggest brands that are going to be watched on a national level and put them together. And that's what we're heading towards. And it is sad. But I also think if done correctly, especially with the way that they set up the pods or whatever, you can get some of that regionality back. And yeah, South Carolina used to be a part of the ACC. They have their one conference championship as an ACC member. And it would be cool to play North Carolina, Clemson. I mean, we already play Clemson, but play them as a conference foe. Even Virginia or whatever, whoever you're at in there. I think having your little local pod to play on a yearly basis, you're going to really build up those rivalries again. It just might take some time. this isn't the first time we've had conference realignment, right? Like things used to be
Happen all
the
the
Wild
time.
West. South Carolina was an independent for a while, which we'll
Mm-hmm.
talk about Notre Dame here in a second too. But I I am a little sad about it, but I'm also not so fatalistic about it that I think this is the end of the sport as we know it or anything like that.
No shot. But bouncing off of your Notre Dame topic, as we roll into the fun segment, I'm gonna jump right in and tell my top 10, but that's just because Notre Dame's number one. Because I found it really interesting how you were saying, like, how is it going to affect South Carolina? Was originally an independent school. Notre Dame's been known to be independent for decades, and I'm interested to see what position that's going to put them in. And they're very strong-headed about staying independent, but I feel like at some point they're going to be pressured into going one side or the other. Like they have to be. So I'd want them in my conference, obviously. So
Yeah,
I'm
so
going to convince them.
let's set that up here in real quick. But one thing I wanted to say about Notre Dame before we get there, right now in that list that we're looking at, the most valuable college football programs, they're number 8. They bring in 120 million. I think that's annually. And that's without being a part of a conference. Now they do have a media deal with the ACC right now, which obviously will go away if the ACC falls apart. So they're about to restructure that them the same way the ACC did, as far as like letting them in on the deal without actually being part of it, or the Big Ten or whatever. I mean, they're honestly a more natural fit in the Big Ten. So yeah, that will be interesting to see because right now they're holding their own financially. They're in the top 10. But if 40 teams are in conferences and Notre Dame's not, what happens there? What does their scheduling look like?
Yeah.
So
They're
anyway,
the outsider.
what we are going to do here at the end with our fun segment is build our own super conference from scratch. I figure we'll just kind of go back and forth. Like you name one, I'll name one. We'll kind of talk about why they're in our conference. So you said your first one's Notre Dame. Why is that?
Mm-hmm. Well, as we already we hit all those points, but I would convince them to be on my conference team because if nobody else has convinced them, I will. That's just how I roll. But yeah, so I already said Notre Dame. What was yours?
All right, so we got Notre Dame. I'm gonna take Florida. I think you need someone from that market down there. They're a big brand. They are a well-respected brand. They have won national championships several times in several different eras. They definitely have established themselves as a blue blood, and I can't see any way if I'm only taking 20 teams that I leave them out. So who else are we taking?
Obviously, South Carolina. I should put it as number one, but it's my number two, and that's just because we love the Gamecocks. That's all.
Yeah,
No
but
real
at the end
reason.
of the day, we discussed it, right? They're number 16 in that revenue chart. We're taking 20 teams. They fit the profile in a lot of ways. So I'm going to take the other USC
Not the
because
one.
they are the other USC. I'm still just having a hard time with the branding of the U of SC. I get it. We got to do it, but it's Anyway,
It's so bad.
so the other USC, huge brand, lots of history. You get the California, LA market. I think they're the bigger brand than UCLA, who I'm scanning our list, doesn't look like is on there at all. But I'm sure that the reason that they're coming with them to the Big Ten is they have some sort of agreement together. But in our ideal scenario, there are no agreements. We're just picking the teams that we're adding. So USC is my second one.
All right. So my third one is going to be Georgia. Kind of like how your reasoning for Florida was. They are a very well-known, I guess, brand in the sense, and they have the Bulldog. They have all that type of stuff going for them. And not to mention that I really, even though they're Georgia, I do appreciate their football program, and I do think that it is a very good football program. So gotta
Reigning
cut them
national
some slack.
champs, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
So by the way, this isn't in particular order. Like I don't think either of us are drafting like, oh, this this is the specific order that everyone needs to be in, and if you're at the bottom of the list, you were barely in. Because my third one is Colorado. I honestly just wrote things down as they came to my head. So Colorado also has a fun football history. They have a national championship. I think that in that region, you don't have very many schools that show up the way that they do, or carry a national brand the way that they do. I can't, are you going to take the Arizona schools? Are you going to take the Utah schools? Maybe Utah is I guess Utah might be a slightly bigger brand than them, but I don't know. Just out of bias, I guess I'm going to take Colorado. So Colorado's making my top 20.
Gotta show those states some love, for real. But I'm gonna go. Number 4 is Oregon, because again, brand wise, and a couple years ago they were an amazing, I mean they still are, but they were doing incredible. And I think part of the reason why it's gone downhill is because of the fact that Pac-10 is crumbling at the seams, essentially. So they don't really have competition anymore. And I want them because they're good. So I'll make them good again.
I think that they've established themselves enough that someone's going to pick them up. Plus, they have all that Nike money. Like, someone's going to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks here. It's probably going to be the Big Ten if it works out the way that it seems to be, where they're kind of poaching the best from the Pac-12 and then kind of working around there. So, I think Oregon deserves a spot. My next one is Texas. They're the biggest brand, or at least tied for the biggest brand in college football. They're tied with Texas A&M, but I don't know. I think Texas is probably even bigger on the non-revenue sports like baseball, and they've usually been pretty good in basketball as well. So yeah, I think Texas pretty much checks all the boxes that you need for a team that will make it in.
Yeah, further down the list, I have more basketball related schools. But for number 5, as much as I hate it, I probably would put Clemson, just because of the fact that I need the rivalry. That's why I came to these types of schools. I love football schools. I love to be in the spirit with the students. So I can't go without my yearly game, even though we might lose.
I've seen a lot of talk that somehow they're going to be left out of this whole scenario, and was even debating with some of the staff a little earlier in the Slack channel about it. And I can't see a scenario where they get left out in the cold. They've established themselves. They've won 2 national championships. They've been to 4 or 5 playoffs. Like,
I think they could be a Notre Dame. I think they could be a Notre Dame in that.
What, independent?
Yeah, I think they honestly should be independent. Now that I think about it, they really have no competition in the ACC. So why not?
Yeah, I think they would struggle a little bit more because Notre Dame has the whole like Catholic thing going for them, where it's like every Catholic that's like half
literally gone there
is like so but that would be interesting. I think we already see that in the ACC, Clemson's struggling to keep up revenue wise with the SEC. So I wonder if how long they would survive in that landscape, which South Carolina went independent for a while to get away from the ACC because everything kind of ran through the North Carolina schools. So maybe it would do them good for a little while. Who knows? All right, my next school along the same lines as my previous one is Oklahoma. They're both already joining the SEC, but those are the 2 biggest brands in that region, and along with Texas A&M, and you got to pick up the Midwest. So, and not the Midwest, the West.
Geography, it's not the same as football, so it's fine. You don't have to know your states. But my number 6 is Alabama, only because they can put Clemson in their place. And maybe we'll give them a little more of a run for their money on both ends, or both of them will be put in their place.
Yeah, I mean, they're obviously one of the most established names in college football history, and in recent college football history, they've built a dynasty that rivals pretty much anything that's ever been built. So you got to keep them. I mean, what is college football if you don't have Bama around?
Literally.
My number 6, along the same lines, same reasons, Ohio State. They have this rich history. They're one of the biggest brands. I don't think that you can have college football without Ohio State. What's your next one?
I was going to put Ohio State. Now this is my basketball-y type of schools. I did UNC, but I also think they really deserve to be in the SEC, honestly. So, because I would really love to have that type of competition between the two university schools of each of the states and just see. But that's really that. And I would love to see some good basketball in the South. We're like mid. We're not amazing.
Yeah, I mean the ACC definitely, at least traditionally, has more basketball schools, so you might want to take that into consideration as you're taking your schools. Plus, flagship university for North Carolina, huge media market. Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. My number 7 is A&M. They are tied with Texas for the most valuable college football program. Like I said, I think Texas is a slightly bigger brand, but nonetheless, there's tons of money flowing through A&M. They've established themselves. They have a good football history as well, so they're in.
It'll be interesting to see because now they're both SEC schools. To your point earlier, my number 8. Just a shout out to my mom. She went to Syracuse, so I'll bring her. I'll put it in just for fun.
Yeah, I mean they have a rich football history, but it's all in the distant past, and
very distant past.
I think that they could be one of those schools that's on the chopping block.
Might get left. Ooh, that's a good one. That's a good one.
Yeah, that borderline. So,
you
my
just
next
cut out
one.
a little bit.
Yeah, you did too. Are you back?
Yeah, I'm good. So just do your next one.
My next one's Michigan. A lot of the same reasons as Ohio State. And what you mentioned earlier, you want to have your natural rivalries. So you have the natural rivalry, and they're also up there, number 3 as the most valuable college football program. So they're surprisingly even a bigger brand than Ohio State, though only by a little bit. So.
All right, my number 9 is Penn State, and that is really because the whole fan base part of it and the whole just like, I guess, celebration wise of it, the whole hyping it up, the whiteouts. I'd love to go see one of those and be in the middle of it. I think that would be so cool to see. I see those videos, but it's really fun. You have a good school or like a really big school like Penn State, obviously, that has the whole student body who like is really into the sports because that's where the chirping happens and the fun rivalries happen and it's like the passion that gets ignited through that. So I think they would be cool to see just even play, even if you're not in my conference, obviously you have to play with them. But like, on your off week, if you get to see them play, I feel like that would be kind of cool. So I wouldn't mind them.
South Carolina doesn't have much of a history with them. I think they played a couple times when South Carolina was an independent, but it would be cool to take some trips up to what is that?
Back home cold.
I know. I'm trying to think of what the town name is.
Oh god, I don't even know. It's literally in the middle of nowhere. It's like it's just like Clemson. It's literally
It's a very like generic town name, college town.
Something like that. I think it is something like that.
I don't know. It'll come back to me later, or it'll come back to me while you're talking again, and I look it up. But my next one is Auburn. So you get your rivalry with Alabama. They're also a giant brand. They have a passionate fan base. They have recent success with several national championships over the last couple of decades. I don't see any way that you leave out Auburn.
I just feel like it's like, I mean, they're good. Yeah. But all right, so my very last one is Wisconsin, and that kind of goes back to the basketball because Lordy, we need some basketball. We also just need maybe some good examples that we can work off of, our team specifically, our men's team. But I think getting some more like basketball oriented schools will help us out and also make more money, because right now basketball only brings in $3 million and women's basketball actually loses $5 million a year. So, and they are national championships. So we need some other form of revenue coming in. And I think that would be a great way to get that going.
Yeah, definitely. We got some basketball schools in here. UNC, Wisconsin, Syracuse, Ohio State, Texas is all right sometimes, Florida.
Michigan.
All right. Yeah. So my last school, almost left them out and then realized my mistake. LSU. You got to have the Cajuns. No, I mean, they've won several national championships. They have a fervent fan base. They are on this list at number 11. They make 114 million a year. Yeah, I don't think you can leave them out. So really, our list, as we discussed earlier, it's a lot of the SEC. It's the top schools in the Big Ten. It's the top schools in the Pac-12. But outside of Texas and Oklahoma, who are no longer in the Big 12, there's really not any Big 12 schools that we poached. We took some ACC schools, but yeah, that's kind of telling of what's left in the Big 12. I feel bad for some of those schools. I mean, Oklahoma State's a cool program. Like I don't want to see them just completely
fall off. That'd be sad.
I mean, Baylor's such a horrifying experience, or really horrifying management of their program there for a while. But they've been kind of fun to root for because there's no reason for them to be good.
There's no reason for them to be bad either. They're just like there. They just exist. Yeah. It's like Seton Hall. It's like all of a sudden they're just like a really good basketball program and they like go to the NCAAs for no reason.
Yeah. But yeah, that Big 12 point was pretty telling to me in the sense of that's what kicked us all off. The SEC got Oklahoma and Texas to come. I mean, really kicked all off like 10 years ago or whatever, but the most recent round of all this, they got Oklahoma and Texas to come, and then it's like, yeah, what's left of that conference? And then now that USC and UCLA are leaving, what's left of that conference? I mean, Oregon, Washington, but I've also seen some reports that the Big Ten is talking to both of them too. So it seems sort of inevitable at this point that at least the big boys of college football are going to get more insulated and more cohesive down to a few different conferences. So we will see. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for joining us again here today on the GamecocksGroup.com podcast. This has been Caleb and Pauline, and we will see you soon.
Bye.